Well, I have worked this rig so far till this point, and I'm going to start to do something a little bit different for the face. I'm going to start working with something that's called layers. So we have this head, which is the main head. And first we need to understand what is a layer. So I'm going to open Python, and there is a rig that it's called rig layers in RMPy. Let's go to the rig builds. And let's try to understand how the layers work. I'm going to start by creating a new Python package. I'm going to name it custom rig. And also I'm going to create a new Python file, and I'm going to name it layers. Okay, I have here the layers rig, sort of. And I'm going to import from RMPy .rig. I'm going to import rig layers. How it's called? Rig. From RMPy.rig import. Let's name of the rig. I thought I had the autocomplete, but looks like it's not working. I have a problem here. Expected. Well, I don't know. It's this one. Import rig builds. No, that's not what I want. I'm gonna open from RMPy. Let's check how it's, what's the name of the rig. It's called rig layers, if I'm not mistaken. It should be here, rig layers, rig layers. Rig layers. Let me make this a little bit smaller so you can see what I'm looking at. Rig static layer. This is the one I'm looking for. So I'm going to import rig static layer. Rig static layer is going to generate a layer for the rig. What is a layer for the rig? If I create here a static layer, and I'm gonna create, if I'm not mistaken, it should be called rig static layer. Let's double click it to see what's the name of the instance. It's called static layer. So there you go, static layer. And I'm going to create this. Look how you create this rig. Usually you can create it. It's created with a build function, and you just need to provide geometry, if I'm not mistaken. Geometries are going to be the arguments, so you need to provide arguments, the geometries, as arguments, the geometries. And in this case, I'm just going to provide the head. I'm going to provide the head. And this is going to be my static layers equals this, and the name of the layer name equals, I can choose a name for the layer. By default it's a static geometry, but in this case I'm going to name it squash head. That's the name of my static layer. I'm going to run this script to see what happens. Let's run it. I'm just going to connect to my Python, and let's try to see what happens when I run it. I'm going to run this and Alt-A to run it in Maya, and there you go. It created one layer here that's called the squash head, and it creates this called head, squash head, and it's a geometry that it's blend shaped to the head, to the original head. I have it here. So if I deform this this blend shape, this vertex, for example here, if I deform this geometry that it was created in the static layer, this goes straight to the head, right? Because it's blend shaped into it. So this is what it's called a static layer. In theory, when this rig moves outside of the origin and it's animated the body, whatever, at some point this rig static layer is going to remain in 0. So it's going to remain in 0, and it's going to have other kinds of deformation. But in order to do that, or to create these deformations, you need to create a system of controls that work in a static way. What would this mean? For example, in this case, I'm going to import a new rig that is in import from rmpy.rig. Let me check rmpy. rmpy.rig by facial, I think. I'm going to select this one that's called rig face squash stretch. Rig face squash stretch. I'm going to import rig face squash stretch. Remember that this is not in rig, it's in rig.facial. It's going to be called rig face squash stretch. Okay, and now I'm going to create an instance of this rig face squash stretch. Rig face squash stretch. I'm going to create a rig, and I'm going to name it this head squash rig equals this. The head squash rig is going to be created based on points, if I'm not mistaken. You can see at the end a test. So you need to provide 3 points, whatever name you want. In this case are called squash. Let's test it. Let's create 3 points. Let's go to the head. These are my face reference points. I'm going to add here 2 or 3 more points. 3 more points. 3 more points like this one. I'm going to move it up. Oh, not that up. Somewhere around here. Let's get the head. I move the head. Let me return it to 0. And these points are going to be the squash, right? So I'm going to put it here, maybe somewhere around here. I need to choose the direction, maybe here, it's okay. I'm going to then duplicate it, move it here, duplicate it, move it here. I'm going to rename them as squash. Okay, so I have these 3 points that are called squash. I'm going to rename them squash 0, 1, 2. I'm going to put it in my face reference points. Maybe I can't group them into another group called squash. Don't forget to orient points every time you create a new group in case you need mirroring. Orient parents, that's not necessary, but I will orient the parents in case something gets wrong to be able to mirror. And next, I'm going to create this rig squash based on these points, right? So where is it? It's not this one, I'm sorry, it's this one. So I'm going to create point base, and I'm going to create it based on these 3 points. Let me go here, builder, render motion. I'm going to click to get the list of points. I have it there. Okay, create point base. I'm passing these points. And let's try to delete the layer. I already deleted, and let's click here to run this. Okay, I run it. And I have the rig squash, which is this. Basically, the rig squash is is a static system that needs to has these joints, 4 joints, and maybe it's missing the squash, the rig 0. Now that I think about that, I guess I will need to create that by hand. There is something called the rig 0 build. It's in every rig. Actually, this is defined, just so you know, it's defined in the custom rig. I don't even remember the name. That's why I need to go and see. It's defined here in the rig base. In the rig base, and you can see in the rig base that it's called 0 joint. Where is the 0 joint? 0 joint. So I'm just going to print it. Print zero joint, and just by calling it, it's going to be created. Actually, I could just call it like this and it's going to be created, right? That line apparently is not doing anything, but it's going to make the zero joint creation. Let's do it. And you can see here how I got now a zero joint squash. And these joints are going to skin out the head. So look, 1, 2, 3, 4 are going to go to skin the head of the layer. The layer is here and is this geo. Actually, I could put all this in one system. Right now there are two systems. This is the squash head and this is the system squash. What I could do is just mix them. To mix them, what you need to do is, once you created the rig, you take this rig and you say, oh, you know what, the rig system of this one is going to be the one from the static layers, rig system. And notice the difference on the result of the rig. Just going to delete these two systems. Notice how now they are two systems, the squash head and the squash. And after doing this little line, and I run it again, now they are both in one system, right? So I have in kinematics, I have the geometry there, the geometry of the head, and I have here the joints. So I could just paint skinning on this. So I select the 4 joints, I select the squash head, and I do a rigging, skin, bind skin. Okay, I put the skin into this one. I'm going to, the name is head squash head. I'm going to paint it, skin, paint skin weights. And how should I paint it? The zero joint is going to have all the weighting for the lower part of the head. So is this one. I'm going to float it all, replace with one float. And these joints, which is 0, 1, 2, I'm going to start with 0. It's going to have the weighting for the lower part of the head, or the rest of the head. Let's try till here. I'm just going to do it fast so we can start testing what this is going to do. So we are going to do this like this, just painting as much as we can the head. Okay, now we need to smooth it out, right? Because the static zero, the zero joint, which it's just a joint that's positioned at 0, it's there. Let's try it here. Let's paint all these, let's paint all these, let's paint, oops, let's paint all these, let's paint all this. Okay, there we go. And I'm just going to smooth, float, 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 float. And to smooth out this squash, I'm just going to select joint, 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 or the 3 joints. I'm going to go to smooth skinning, which didn't open anything. Smooth skinning. I'm going to load the joints. I think that I have something wrong on my skin cluster. Is not set up. Anyway, doesn't matter. I'm gonna go here, smooth, float. Okay, and I'm just going to create the surface. Create the surface, which creates the cylinder. Show, isolate, select, add selected objects. Where is it? It's supposed that to have created this cylinder for the smoothing, which I don't see. I don't see. Where is it? I put just one joint. This is there's something wrong here. So I need to select these 3 joints, then click them here. Now they're loaded. Now create surface. There is my surface. I can increase the radius, maybe 4, 5, 10. Okay, I'm going to select this, smooth selection. And once I have it selected, I have this created. What does this do? Look, you can select here the controls, which are these squares. Let me make them a little bit bigger. Let me increase the size. Actually, let me modify all of them at the same time. So I have my controls. I'm going to press F8, select them, F8. I have my controls. I'm just going to make them bigger and flat them. And there you go. And these controls are going to be part of the facial, which means that now, look, if I select this one and I move it, it's squashing the head, right? There was a problem there with something twisting when I move this, and I think it has to do with the orientation of my original points. I'm going to save this skinning. Just go here and save the data. I have my geometry, save skinning, and what I need to do is now it's check out the orientation of my original points. I think that's the problem, and the problem is that my points should be oriented in X. So right now they are just like X is pointing to the side, and I need a correct orientation of these points, otherwise it's going to be flipping like this. So I'm just going to rotate it so it's aiming here. For example, I'm going to click in my rig tools, I'm going to aim it, aim to object, and that's generated an error because I don't have an object vector, and it's completely straight. This is going to be my object vector. This one aims to this one, aim to object, this one aims to this one, with this object vector, aim to object, and this one just aligns to this one, align rotation. And you can see now the y-axis is pointing forward. I don't need this one anymore. And let's build it again. So let's select these face reference points and let's save them. So I'm just going to my builder. I'm going to name these ones face reference points, save them. Okay, and now I can just click here and reload this one, right? I was loading it with this one. I haven't put it in a layer or anything. I just have this code here running. There you go. It is created in one layer and I have it there. I need to load the skinning for sure. Right now I'm doing it by hand. Load skinning. There is the skinning, and I didn't save the shape, so I would have need to save the shapes. Let's go and see the shapes. Okay, here are the control shapes. Let's make them bigger. Click, 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 click. Maybe like this. Maybe this one can be smaller, like this. I don't need it to be that big. This one maybe needs to be a little bit bigger. And there you go. You have 4 lines. Now I can move this one forward and backward, you see. And it's deforming the character in a squash and stretch. This is a static rig, which means that at some point the controls are not linked to the rig. When I move it, the rig will move with the character and do whatever the character is doing. But when I modify these ones, the controls, the joints, all the rig, it's happening in 0, 0, 0. Look, let me isolate this, or not isolate this. You can see here the joints are here. Even though I'm moving this one, the joints here are reacting, right? And I can modify this one and look how the joints are reacting, right? And it's still, okay, you're going to say, well, but what this has to do? Well, right now the body, the head of my character, it's still at 0, but I could have been moving it with the other body or with the full body and still gets that deformation, right? That's basically what a static rig is and how the layers will work. I'm going to continue talking about layers because I'm going to be adding more layers, but I hope this gives you an idea on how the layers are working. I'll see you in the next video.